Today is Tuesday, February 20th. This is the 9th meeting of the current term of the Metropolitan Council of Nashville and Davidson County. Will all members of the council, as well as the public, please rise for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. The invocation is being offered this evening by Mr. Harry L. Allen. Mr. Allen is the guest of District 4 Council Member Mike Cortez. Mr. Allen, sir, welcome.
Thank you, and thank you for having me, Mike Cortez, and thank you all for your service to this city. So good to be with you tonight, and to have my son here with me as well. Yes. I was smart to bring him so that all the attention could go that way. No, my wife got me an Apple Watch a while back, and every now and then it reminds me to do a simple task, breathe. And I think I'm breathing, but usually I guess I'm not. And so it's good to remember and reflect and take a step back and pause and breathe. So pray with me. Dear God, sustainer and life giver, thank you for the work and purpose of this evening. Thank you for the very breath we breathe, the rhythm of inhaling and exhaling that we so often take for granted. Thank you for how it reminds us of what life is all about. Inhaling, taking in life and all that's around us, caring for ourselves as we consume the air you give. Exhaling, giving back to the world that which is within us, serving others and the community in which we're placed. This taking in and giving back, caring for ourselves, and making sure we're fit and strong enough to care for others. Perhaps this is the very purpose of our breathing. I pray for this body of government, the members of Metro Council, who has gathered tonight to conduct the city's business and represent its people. Give them the energy, strength, grit, and wisdom to lead, and give them space and time to rest, to recoup, and re-energize as needed. Remind all of us that service above self doesn't mean running ourselves into the ground, that it still requires us to practice self-care, and that it is good to take a breath in sometimes. And let the rhythmic inhaling and exhaling of the breath you've given to all of us sustain us each day. Amen. Yeah. I pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Allen. That was definitely a good reminder. I think even at last meeting, I said that from this dais, right? Let's all take a deep breath sometimes. Thank you. Council members, since last we met just 3 days ago, our city and our own public square, the civic heart of our city, was visited by a group of hateful white supremacist demonstrators. I said my piece about this publicly on Saturday, so I will not speak at length, and especially because Councilmember Coupin will be recognized subsequent to our elections and confirmations for an extraordinary measure, so that we may promptly repudiate those hateful and abhorrent actions on the legislative record. I would ask for your support in his request for a suspension of the rules, because white supremacy and rising fascism are both a local and national emergency. And as elected officials, while being careful not to provide any one hateful individual or organization the attention they desire, we must and will call it out. I have several announcements and reminders to bring to members and the public's attention. Early voting is underway through Tuesday, February the 27th. There are 3 changes in the usual early voting locations, so please do be advised. Follow and share the social media of the Davidson County Election Commission and find their resources online at nashville.gov. Please make a plan to vote early. Your vote is your voice, and our democracy does not work well for all if we do not all vote in every election. Members, please also save the date of Wednesday, February 27th, you will have received an email about an Affordable Housing 201 educational session with Angie Hubbard in the Housing Division of Metro Planning here in the council chamber. This has been in the works with Planning and Zoning Chair Gamble and the Housing Division for several months, and will be similar to the deep dives that we have done in recent months to extend council's orientation and continued learning with, for example, the Homeless Services Division, Metro Schools. This education session, as well as a variety of interesting webinars, are upcoming this month. The Minority Caucus reception is tomorrow evening. Walk Bike Nashville's Pedestrian Memorial is on Saturday. So members, please be reminded to opt in to council's new continuing ed and events calendar in your Outlook so that you can make sure to be apprised of all those happenings at a glance. Okay. February 25th to March 2nd is Tennessee Severe Weather Awareness Week. And March 3rd is the anniversary of the 2020 tornado. And with the December 9th tornado recovery still in progress, members, you will find a flyer on your desk about the joint initiative of the Public Health and Safety Committee with the leadership of Councilwoman Weiner and Chair Evans, along with Heather Mathis, meteorologist at News Channel 5, to highlight more safe places to go in the event of a tornado. I would ask members that have mobile home communities in their districts to please be especially mindful and conscientious, as those are some of our most vulnerable citizens, as well areas of encampment. So let's all work together, and by March 3rd, hopefully we can come up with a proposed new safe place, whether that be our own police precincts, our fire stations, faith communities in every district in partnership with that program. So I believe Ms. Weiner will have an email coming out to you tomorrow with some additional links and details. Okay, members will find on their desks a memo from Margaret Darby about the District 5 school board vacancy. This memo was also sent today to School Board Chair Rachel Ann Elrod for the school board's awareness. This is a fairly lengthy memo, but this District 5 school board vacancy needs to be brought to the attention of the larger community and does have a citizen engagement and nomination component. So if members will bear with me, I will be reading the majority of the memo into the record. Okay. From Margaret Darby to our council, and again shared with School Board Chair Elrod. This is about the law, rules, and procedures for filling the District 5 school board vacancy. On December 31st, 2023, then District 5 school board member Christiane Buggs submitted her resignation via email to the Metropolitan Nashville School Board and the MNPS superintendent. Notice of the resignation and the resulting vacancy was provided to me, the vice mayor, and the council office on February 12th, 2024. So for members' awareness in the community, the School Board District 5 contains all or a portion of Council Districts 2, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 24, and 26. Those school board districts are larger than council districts, obviously, there. State law provides that vacancies occurring on the school board be filled by the council, and that any person so appointed shall serve until a successor is elected and qualified. Tennessee Code Annotated provides this. Okay, school board elections are partisan. And as such, the primary elections are currently underway with election day scheduled for March 5th. The general election is scheduled for August 1st, and independent candidates can file candidacy petitions with the Davidson County Election Commission until April 4th of 2024. Rule 49 of the Council Rules of Procedure provide the process for filling vacancies of public officials. The vice mayor will announce the vacancy at the February 20th meeting. That's happening now. At least 4 weeks must pass before the election to fill the vacancy occurs. Thus, March 19th, 2024 is the next council meeting date following that 4-week period. Now, regarding nominations, both council members and the general public may nominate candidates to fill the vacant seat. A person may nominate themselves to fill the vacancy. All persons nominated must be eligible to serve as the District 5 representative as provided in state law. All nominations must be in writing, signed by the nominator, and filed with the Metro Clerk, and that is here on the second floor mezzanine, right outside of our foyer, with the Metro Clerk by 4 p.m. on February 27th, 2024. Okay, February 27th, 2024. Within 3 days after the nomination is filed, the candidate must file a copy of their resume along with a completed questionnaire with the Metro Clerk. Failure to timely file the questionnaire with the Metro Clerk will result in withdrawal of the nomination. The Metro Clerk will then supply the resumes, questionnaires, and other nomination documents to council members. Candidates will be required to appear before the Rules Committee to be interviewed on March 19th, 2024. Failure to appear before the Rules Committee will result in withdrawal of the nomination. Support for a candidate can be demonstrated in a few ways. Voters may file a petition of support with the Metro Clerk. The candidate's nominator may speak up to 5 minutes at the March 19th council meeting where the election will take place. The nominator may yield their time or a portion thereof to the candidate and other persons wishing to speak, but in no event may more than 5 minutes of total speaking time be allotted per candidate. Now, lastly, regarding the election will be held in accordance with Council Rules 48.2 and 48.3. Voting shall be by machine vote, where votes may only be cast for persons properly nominated. The persons receiving the largest number of votes cast will be elected if that person received a majority of the vote. Abstentions will not be considered as votes cast and therefore will not contribute to the election. If more than 2 candidates are on the ballot and no candidate receives a majority of the votes cast, then the 2 candidates with the largest vote totals will proceed to a runoff election. If there is a tie vote between 2 candidates, the vice mayor will cast the tie-breaking vote. And if machine voting is not available, let's please not hopefully have that happen, the dreaded written paper ballots will be utilized. Okay, so members, you will have received this on your desks in your email. We have now, as required, read this into the public record for the community's awareness. So I appreciate your attention. Thank you. Okay, lastly, in addition to the citizens joining us for elections and confirmations, we had and still have some special guests in our chambers this evening. During our announcements and presentations period, we were honoring the life of civil rights leader King Hollins, as well as the service of numerous Black elected officials, many of them former council members, in honor of Black History Month. So welcome and hello to you all. Remaining with us to observe the meeting is former Mayor Bill Purcell and his students from his public advocacy class at Vanderbilt University. So welcome to those young people as well. We appreciate you being here. And you do have a professor who knows a few things about local government. So, all right, moving on then to our roll call. Without objection, we will suspend the calling of the roll and ask the clerk to record the names of the members present throughout the meeting. On to adoption of minutes. Is there a motion for the adoption of the minutes from February 6th? Okay, properly seconded. Without objection, the minutes of the meeting are adopted. Mr. Clerk, are there any messages from the current mayor? Not you, Mr. Purcell. Not you, Mayor.
There are no messages from the mayor.
Okay. All right. Okay. We are now on section E of our agenda, elections and confirmations. We have 1 election and 6 potential confirmations this evening to a variety of boards and commissions. For all appointees and nominees, we appreciate your willingness to serve and your patience as we proceeded through our committee meetings and announcements this evening. Item E1, we will conduct the election first, and all members' tablets are open to the election module. And ITS is here to assist as needed. Okay, item E1 on our agenda is an election to to fill a vacancy for a term expiring January 31st, 2026 on the Transportation Licensing Commission. Mr. Michael Hayes has been nominated by Councilmember Coupin, and Mr. Ryan Burring has been nominated by Councilmember Stiles. Mr. Clerk, pardon? Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay. Councilwoman Sepulveda, Chair Sepulveda, you're recognized.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Rules and confirmation considered Michael Hayes for a term expiring January 31st, 2026 on the Transportation Licensing Commission. We voted 6 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting, and Mr. Ryan Burning withdrew.
Oh, well, okay. Okay, well, let's just then, I think, do a, after all that, ITS, thank you for getting our modules in place. I think we will just then do a voice vote. All in favor of the election of, or rather the nomination of Mr. Michael Hayes to the Transportation Licensing Commission, please say aye. Aye. Any voting no or any seeking to abstain? Okay, you have elected Mr. Michael Hayes to the Transportation Licensing Commission. Thank you, Mr. Hayes. We appreciate you. Okay, congratulations. Okay, so as ITS now moves away from our election module, E2 through E7 are our confirmation votes. And so I will go to Chair Sepulveda for her report, please.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. On the appointment of Ms. Gigi Brumwright for the Agriculture Expansion Board reappointment for a term expiring on February 6, 2027. Rules voted 5 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. For the reappointment of Ms. Joyce Searcy for the Public Library Board reappointment on April 6, for a term expiring April 6, 2031. Rules voted 5 in favor, 1 against, 1 not voting. For the Sports Authority reappointment of Mr. Jad Duncan for a term expiring on February 20, 2030. Rules voted 8 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. For the Sports Authority reappointment of Mr. Emmett Wayne for a term expiring on February 17, 2030. Rules voted 8 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. For the Board of Zoning Appeals, reappointment of Ms. Ashanti Davis for a term expiring on February 26, 2029. Rules voted 8 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. And for the Board of Zoning Appeals, reappointment of Mr. Ross Pepper for a term expiring on February 26, 2029. Rules voted 8 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting.
Okay. Ms. Sepulveda, can you please make a consolidated motion for all those folks who received a unanimous approval in committee? So that would be items E2, E4, E5, E6, and E7.
So moved.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Okay. Let's see. So, council members, without objection, all appointees having received a unanimous recommendation of Rules and Confirmations Election Committee via the report of Chair Sepulveda can be voted on at one time. And so knowing that we do have a no vote, we are holding out then item 3 regarding the Public Library Board. But even among those that we have consolidated, much like a consent agenda, you may request to remove a confirmation item from the collective vote. Does anyone wish to do so? Okay. Okay. Having heard the report of Chair Sepulveda on items E2, E4, E5, E6, and E7, all in favor, please say aye. Okay, any voting no? Any abstaining? Okay. Folks, if you will stay with us, we'll recognize everyone at the end. Okay, so back to item E3 regarding the Public Library Board, the reappointment of Ms. Joyce Searcy for a term expiring on April 6th, 2031, with a negative vote before us. We still have to. Yeah, well, we will need to go on the boards. So, Mr. Clerk, would you please open the machine for agenda item E3, please? Is anyone seeking help with their tablet? Okay, with all votes in, please close the machines, Mr. Clerk, and show the vote. Okay, you have reappointed Ms. Joyce Searcy to the Library Board. So now I will ask that all folks having been appointed or reappointed, oh, pardon me? Yes, Ms. Lee, you are recognized.
Yes, I just have a question.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
don't want to go back on anything, but I was just wondering, when you do a vote like this, when would have been the time to have the discussion part before you voted?
Thank you, ma'am. Yeah, so that could have been a point of order. I did not
Okay.
call for discussion on
Okay.
Ms. Searcy.
Okay,
So-
I'm fine. I just was wondering when, and so now I know. Thank
Okay,
you.
I appreciate that. Yes, members, if I ever fail to call for discussion, you absolutely may stand and call a point of order, and I would welcome it. It's not my intent to conduct a vote without discussion, but as you can see with these election and confirmations, they vary kind of every time, whether we consolidate them, we take them independently, we do elections. So I appreciate your point of inquiry, Ms. Lee, duly noted. Okay, so for all folks who were kind to volunteer to put themselves forward, I will read your name and ask that you please stand, and then we will collectively congratulate you at the end. I don't know if Mr. Michael Hayes, who was elected earlier, is still with us. Mr. Hayes, to the Transportation Licensing Commission, if you would please stand, sir. Reappointed to the Agricultural Extension Board is Ms. Gigi Jumwright. Hi there, Gigi. To the Public Library Board, reappointed is Ms. Joyce Searcy. To the Sports Authority, you have reappointed Mr. Jad Duncan. Also to the Sports Authority, you have reappointed Mr. Emmett Wynn. And to the Board of Zoning Appeals, you have reappointed Ms. Ashanti Davis. And you have reappointed Mr. Ross Pepper. Mr. Pepper here. Well, thank you all for your willingness to serve. We appreciate you very much. Congratulations, Phoebe. Work out that election. It's my spread. It's basically Okay, members, let's please get back to our seats. Thank you again to everyone being elected, appointed, and reappointed. We are grateful for your service.
So the two of y'all need to get together. So you need to do it.
Okay, we are now moving on to Section F on our agenda, public comment for legislative items on this agenda. Oh. Hello, Mr. Coupin. Okay. Mr. Coupin, sir, are you seeking to be recognized?
There we go.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam President. I am seeking to be recognized. I'm requesting the suspension of Rules 13, 7, and 31 for the purpose of consideration of a late resolution condemning the Nazi march through downtown Nashville on February 17th, and to show support for all Nashvillians regardless of race, religion, nationality, ethnicity, gender, orientation, and age.
Is there any objection to a suspension of the rules? Seeing none, the rules are suspended, so it's back to you, Councilman Coupin.
I'd like to move it with a brief comment.
Okay, and might I suggest in your motion to approve that you might consider invoking Rule 12.3 such that all members voting in the affirmative will be signed on as co-sponsors and make that a part of your motion?
Yes, I'd like to move it with Rule 12.3, please.
Thank you, sir. Back to you.
So this weekend, a group of individuals holding flags with swastikas on them and chanting horrific phrases like "deport all Mexicans" marched through the streets in downtown Nashville. As a Jewish individual, seeing a swastika flying on the streets of my city and my district was absolutely horrifying. My grandfather fought the Nazis in World War II. It's not lost upon me that we are still fighting this battle. This display was made worse by the fact that they were chanting such horrific things that go against the values for which Nashville stands. These individuals quickly left downtown, and while their goal was to divide us, they had the opposite effect. This demonstration brought together groups of people that have struggled over the last few months to connect. At the end of the day, while we may differ on certain things, we all agree that hate has no place here. And we all agree that every time hate rears its ugly head, we will be back to stand up and push it down over and over and over. This council body is an inspiration to me. Earlier, we celebrated Olivia Hill's 5th birthday. We're made up of Jews and Muslims and immigrants and members of our LGBTQ community with different races and ages and so much more. We represent the fabric of Nashville, and we will not stand for hate in our city. This resolution is a message to those who seek to bring us down. We are not afraid. We are not divided. We are together as a voice for peace and love. To our immigrant neighbors, we stand with you. To our Jewish neighbors, we stand with you. To our Muslim neighbors, we stand with you. To our Black and brown neighbors, we stand with you. To anyone impacted by this weekend's events, we stand with you. You've heard it from our mayor, and you'll hear it from us. We want you to stay. And as the vice mayor said, I'd like to invoke Rule 12.3 so that everyone voting in the affirmative tonight is listed on this bill to show as one voice that hate has no place in our city. Thank you.
So we have a motion to approve with Rule 12.3 properly seconded. And is there any discussion? Mr. Prep-T, you are recognized, sir.
Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor, and please allow me to associate myself with the comments made by my colleague, and thank you so much for bringing this resolution. I've said before this body numerous times how the ideologies of white nationalism is the largest internal threat, bar none, to our national security and to our domestic tranquility. A domestic tranquility that was completely tarnished this past week. I want to associate myself with this resolution, and I rise in favor of this resolution in saying that we as a body, in no uncertain terms and in the strongest terms possible, condemn the ideologies of white nationalism, that we stand united against the ideologies of white nationalism, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, and anti-immigrant sentiment. As many of you know, my family immigrated here from the island nation of Haiti. My parents immigrated here because they understood the importance of the American dream and how these ideologies go against the basic founding of our nation and the basic ideologies of the American dream. And how, despite what these people may say, every single one of us has an indelible mark on the American story. And I want to say unequivocally that we will be united regardless of what these people say, regardless of what these people do, and that they have absolutely no place in our community whatsoever. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prepty. Mr. Huffman, you're next to be recognized, sir.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. And thank you to my colleague, Councilmember Coopin, for bringing this late file resolution. I rise in support. I don't think that's any shock to my colleagues. And I've been thinking about what I want to say here. I don't know if y'all are familiar with Vincent Horsley or not. He's a friend of mine, lives on my side of town. Vincent was one of the organizers of the Nashville sit-ins in the 1960s. Vincent had sit-down organized meetings with the Reverend John Lewis, with Martin Luther King Jr., and I consider him a good friend. I get to learn firsthand lessons about how we should be tolerant and the struggles that he dealt with. He was spit on, he had glass thrown at him, and this is all within his lifetime, y'all. He's 80 years old. Now, I found myself riled up in this for one reason or another over the weekend. And, let's just call it what it is. I'm a bald white man with a Southern accent. I directly threaten what they're standing for, and I'm bad for business. And I'm proud to be an ally to not only my friend, Councilmember Coopin, but for anybody that doesn't look like me or talk like me or believes what I believe in, because that's the country that we live in. And, I want to do that because I've got a little boy, and I want him to grow up in a home where equity, tolerance, and inclusion are taught. And to be honest, I just don't want him to grow up in a hateful world. Now, don't mean to bring a prop, but I am holding a book that I'm going to quote here. The Soul of America by John Meacham, fellow Nashvilleian. And it's words that it just really speaks to this moment. And the opposite of fear is hope, defined as the expectation of good fortune, not only for ourselves, but for the group to which we belong. Fear feeds anxiety and produces anger. Hope breeds optimism and feelings of well-being. Fear is about limits. Hope is about growth. Fear points at others, assigning blame. Hope points ahead, working for a common good. Fear pushes away. Hope pulls us closer. Fear divides. Hope unifies. We will stand united. Nazis are not welcome in Nashville. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Huffman. Mr. Bradford, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. So colleagues, December 1944, my great-grandfather, James Sharp, was participating in the Battle of the Bulge, one of many countless battles in our history where we were trying to eradicate and liberate Europe from the Nazi regime and their vile ideology, and to bring an end to the Holocaust, where millions of innocent lives were systematically exterminated. Yet here we are 80 years later, still dealing with these bigoted cowards marching down our streets with impunity. Tonight, I stand with all of you with a resolute spirit to denounce the ugly spectacle that many of us witnessed this past weekend. We must never forget the horrors unleashed by the Nazis, nor should we allow their ideology of hate to ever gain a foothold again in our society. We will stand united against any form of bigotry, discrimination, and hatred. We must educate ourselves and future generations about the dangers of extremism and the importance of tolerance, compassion, and respect for all individuals, regardless of their race, religion, or background. Let us honor the memory of those who suffered and perished. Over 6 million Jews, LGBT individuals, Muslims, Gypsies, Germans and Europeans of African descent, those with intellectual disabilities. And let's strive and work towards a world where such atrocities will never happen again. Let us reject the poisonous ideology of Nazism and strive to build a world where love, understanding, and acceptance prevail. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bradford. Councilwoman at large, Madam Pro Tem Suara, you are recognized.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Thank you, Councilmember Coupin, for the resolution. I rise in support as well. Unfortunately, this is not new to me. White supremacists burned down a mosque in Colombia not too long ago. Many of you may not know, but I think it was 2017, 2018 when we had the White Lives Matter rally in Murfreesboro and Shelbyville, where they were protesting having Somalis here in Tennessee. So them marching on the street and asking Mexicans to go home and waving neo-Nazis flag, very sad, not surprising. But I'm very glad that I serve in this body with people that stands with all of us together condemning this hate. And we will continue to stand. I shared at the press conference yesterday that in October, when the Nazis were marching in Franklin, the Jewish Federation reached out to the American Muslim Advisory Council. And the American Muslim Advisory Council co-signed a press release condemning that march in Franklin. I've been involved in interfaith work in Nashville way before I was elected. And I have friends on the Jewish and Christian sides that I've worked with. And every time something happens, we always stand together. And that's not going to change. As somebody who represents all of Nashville and a member of the interfaith community, like I said yesterday, when you come for the Jewish community, you're coming for me. And when you come for the Mexican community, you're also coming for me. Because we are one Nashville and we will stand together. But before I take my seat, I will be remiss if I don't share something with you. As I'm sitting here, I got a text. It was a tweet by sitting Congressman Andy Ogles that was confronted about kids in Palestine. And his response was, let's kill them all. This is the type of things, statements, rhetoric, that made it okay for people to march and preach hate. It is not enough that we sign resolution. It is not enough that we talk about it. Our actions mattered. In the conflict overseas, I've been very mindful of what I say and how I say it, because I want to make sure that my Jewish friends are not hurt in what I said, and to make sure that my Palestinian families are taken care of. Very calculated, because I represent both. And that's the way it should be. But when legislators at the federal level or the state level continue to demonize people, continue to only look at one side and not the other, that's the result that we see on the street. And I hope that we will all continue to do better. This authorization, this demonization, this kill them all is only breaking us apart. And I hope that as we reject it, I hope others take lead and they look at it and they do the same. Hate is not welcome here, and is not welcome in our state or country. Thank you.
Ms. Weiner, Councilwoman Weiner, you are recognized.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. So yesterday at the press conference, I did something I thought I'd never have to do, and it was tell another story. It was summer. School was about to get out in 1964. I was 8 years old. And I didn't make it to school that morning. Want to know why? Because my neighbors down the street decided that they wanted to stone the Jew girl. That was me, y'all. I've got grandchildren. You have children. You have grandchildren. It is 2024. It is 60 years after that happened. We should not be here. We cannot be here. Think about the kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Weiner. Ms. Evans-Siegel, you're recognized.
Thank you. I want to echo what my colleague and all my colleagues have said, and I want to thank my colleagues for their support in condemning what was the worst word you could use in my house growing up, which was the word hate. I could use any four-letter word and I would get in a little bit of trouble. But if I used the word hate, I was in a lot of trouble because hate was the worst thing that you could say and it was the worst thing you could be. I, like other colleagues in this room, did this weekend and have done before, had to drop my 3 kids off at a house of worship on Sunday morning for lessons, a house of worship which has been shot at in recent times. And I had to trust MNPD to keep them safe, which we do, whether they are in our neighborhoods or our schools or our houses of worship. And we should not have to worry about our children, no matter where they are in this city or this world. And the fact that I had to wake up and assure my children that they would be safe. It was okay. We had tracked these people out of town whilst knowing that we as a body were still getting hateful emails from them, and turn them over to a world unknown. It was terrifying, and the support of this body, I'm just grateful for. I heard from a lot of you, and I wanted to thank you for that. And I want to just echo again everything everybody has said tonight. So thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Evans Siegel. Councilwoman Sandra Sepulveda, you are recognized.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I won't be terribly long. I know that a lot of us have spoken. I just thought it was important for me to say something. Being the first Mexican-American council member, first Latina council member elected, a lot of what you heard over the weekend is nothing new that I have not heard throughout my 4 years, that I have not had someone say to my face as I go to their house to hear a constituent need, as I have not heard through emails and voicemails. And I am very happy that we are standing together as a body denouncing this. I would be remiss if I did not call upon the state to do the same. A lot of the hateful rhetoric that has come from the state has led us here where people feel comfortable enough to march in the streets with these flags of hate. Over the weekend, also dealing with hateful stuff that was painted on overpasses and vacant lots. And I do want to thank the administration and state reps who have been helping to make sure that that is covered up as quickly as possible. To the Mexican community that was called out specifically, it is hard when a group of people that are so hardworking and have come to this place with a better future in mind for them and their families, to be singled out like this, and they are not the only ones. So my last comment is to them. Que viva la comunidad inmigrante y que viva la comunidad mexicana.
Thank you, Ms. Sepulveda. Councilwoman Welsh, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. This is very moving to hear all my colleagues speak so eloquently about the cancer and scourge that is hate. But I think that it's very important that we all remember that hate only wins if we let it, and we cannot be afraid. Hate traffics in fear. Hate looks for us to cower and back down and be afraid to look an individual or a group in the eye and say, no, get the hell out of here. You're not welcome here. Hate is not welcome here. We can never give away our power to stand up to this, no matter how frightened we are. We have to know that each one of us has each other's hand and each other's back, and we walk together to fight this. And we're going to continue to do this until it is gone, it is banished, and no one has to live in fear, and no one has to live surrounded by people who dehumanize them and make them feel that they are nothing. We are all something. We have the power to make a difference. And I am very proud right now to be in this body, to know that we are all going to work together to fight against this till our last breath. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Welsh. Councilman Mike Cortez, you're recognized.
I just want to say I appreciate my colleagues speaking out, telling your story. Thank you for that. And to echo what Councilwoman Walsh had said, to the kids listening, the people listening to this broadcast, it's easy to fall into and wonder why these people are preaching what they're preaching, why they're preaching this hate. It's really important to remember that we have agency and not to lose that agency. We always have a choice in how we respond. And I think that's very, very important. I always go back to this quote. It's from Mr. Rogers. When I was a young boy, I would see scary things in the news. My mother would say to me, look for the helpers. You always find people who are helping. And to those kids watching, to people listening to this broadcast, you always have agency to be a helper. And know that this body will always support you in that.
Thank you, Mr. Cortez. Mr. Nash, you are recognized, sir.
Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. I would like to go on the board. I want my vote clearly recorded is for this resolution.
Thank you, sir. We can do that. Okay, with no one else seeking to be recognized, and thanking you all for your very kind, appropriate, moving words this evening, we have a motion that is properly seconded, and we can put this on to the board. Members, I guess I will just share with the community who may be wondering about this resolution. We will have received it about 3:45 this afternoon by email. It's on our desks. And Mr. Clerk, whether later this evening or tomorrow, we'll get this uploaded into Legistar for the community's awareness. But with that, Mr. Clerk, would you please open the machines? Okay, with all votes in, please close the machine and show the vote. Thank you, members. Okay. We will now move on to section F of our agenda, which is public comment on legislative items on this agenda. Pursuant to the Tennessee Code, time is reserved for public comment on legislative items appearing on this agenda. Members of the public wishing to speak may sign up on the council meeting sign-up sheet at the Metro Clerk's office counter on the day of a scheduled meeting. Public comment sign-up for council meetings ends at 6 p.m. Public comment is limited to 20 minutes total at council meetings, and each speaker is allowed up to 2 minutes to speak. I will call on members of the public in the order that they have signed up and share the legislative item that they have indicated they are going to speak about. First is, and I do apologize, it is difficult to read, but is it Mr. Sid Kane or Ms.? I apologize. Yes, if you would please restate your name and here to speak on the resolution condemning these Nazi demonstrations.
Correct.
Yes.
I am Sydney Kane, and I am excited to, well, not excited to be here to speak about anti-Semitism, but I'm grateful for the opportunity to share my experiences. Seeking refuge in the United States saved my immediate family from genocide, but it did not shield them from the venom that is anti-Semitism. Instead of being welcomed with a warm embrace, they were welcomed with slurs, slashed tires, and egged houses. However, in the grand scheme of things, they considered these trials a blessing compared to what the unspeakable atrocities their family faced in Poland. Gratitude filled their hearts for the sanctuary provided to them by the United States, understanding that enduring some hate was a trivial inconvenience compared to the torture and death they escaped. However, there is a flaw in this seemingly optimistic perspective. By silently enduring the hatred, we inevitably allowed its proliferation. Now, my generation faces a resurgence of anti-Semitism resembling that of 1930s Germany. Since October 7th, the United States has witnessed a staggering 400% increase in anti-Semitic incidents. Many within the Jewish community now live in fear and feel increasingly unwelcome. I've witnessed individuals nervously asking, "Would you hide me?" This is the wrong question. Jews should never have to hide in the shadows again. I will not hide. Instead, we should be asking, will you stand beside me in this fight? It is imperative that we amplify our voices against anti-Semitism. Silence only strengthens the hate. In a world where the loudest voices often dictate the narrative, why are we whispering our condemnation of anti-Semitism? Now is not the time for muted disapproval. It is your job to unequivocally reject anti-Semitism and make it clear that hateful ideology has no place in Nashville. Make your support overpower their hate. Stand with us now while we still have time.
Thank you, Ms. Kane. Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Joy Andal. Joy, I've got the public ADA mic on for you. Go ahead, Ms. Andal. You're here to speak on Bill 257.
Hi. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. Vision Zero is a global initiative aimed at reducing fatalities, with cities worldwide successfully decreasing death rates. It emphasizes the preventability and unacceptability of transportation-related injuries and deaths. Nashville has committed to achieving zero traffic fatalities, implementing strategies that prioritize safety for pedestrians, cyclists, motorists, and rollers like myself. Despite these efforts, Nashville's fatality rate remains disproportionately high compared to cities with higher populations and fewer deaths. Tonight, vote unanimously in favor of this 257, which approves an application for a transportation planning grant aimed at funding safety enhancements for section identified on Old Hickory Boulevard that has already had several fatalities. Please start a discussion like Atlanta. They have a new ordinance banning right turns on red within downtown and midtown. Alternatively, you could explore installing red arrow lights for right turns on state pikes to mitigate auto pedestrian fatalities. Just 2 weeks ago, I shared experience that underscored the urgency of our safety, and tragically the next day, news emerged of a woman being killed by a box truck. Was it her fault for being a responsible pedestrian? Fox 17 reported the driver received a misdemeanor citation for failing to yield to the pedestrian. Also, to the students in the room tonight, in the year of 2000, there was a committee created by executive order by the Mayor's Advisory Committee for People with Disabilities. I believe it's Mayor Purcell may or may not, but anyway, I think we all need to thank Nashville for considering us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Andal. Next is Mr. Steve Ryder, here to speak in opposition to Resolution 2024-240. You're recognized, Mr. Ryder.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the council. First of all, I'd like to thank Bill Purcell for taking his public advocacy class here today, because this is where you learn about it. So you're the future. Good luck. I'm addressing really the preamble of the resolution here. It says, whereas the resolution appropriated $25 million in American Rescue Plan Act funds for the Metropolitan Development Housing Agency to provide low-cost loans to developers for the addition of deeply affordable housing units, with loan proceeds to be used to address affordable housing and homeless services. That is not correct. When this council passed that, they passed $25 million for MHED, which was for services, and $25 million for MDHA to do affordable housing. So I'm requesting that you delete at the end there homeless services, because the $25 million that was given to MDHA was not for homeless services. If you pass this, the problem with it is that Office of Homeless Services would have the right to come here and say, we want to ask for reallocation of that money, and it would go to them. And I don't think it's proper for $33 million to go to them when they were just entitled to $25 million. I think MDHA now, they're shovel-ready projects that they could do, but they could not go out there and give the money to themselves. But there's other ways of doing housing, and I want to see housing, because housing really addresses homelessness. And so we have to focus on that. I addressed this council before on tax-exempt multifamily housing revenue bonds. I think that's the way to go. I understand that HUD will not go out there and fund totally the public housing subsidy, which they did before. So, but I do think we are entitled to affordable housing, public housing units in the city, and we need to take advantage of that. And Bill, I'm going to be seeing you on that shortly. So anyhow, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr.
Best
Ryder.
of everything.
Okay. Next is Mr. Will Hester, speaking on agenda item 44, RS 2024-239, speaking in opposition. Go ahead, sir.
Good evening, and thank you so much for the opportunity to address you this evening. We are homeowners in East Nashville in the Renraw neighborhood. We live about 3 blocks from the site where Skinny Dennis hopes to come in and be one of the businesses to add to the wonderful fabric of our tourism, hospitality, and live music that makes Nashville the amazing place to live that it is. But I come to you today against this change for Skinny Dennis because 3 blocks away where we live, we are struggling to have existing codes enforced against businesses that are not good neighbors. We chose to live in an area that is dense, that is racially and socioeconomically diverse. I'm here because I have the luxury of working an 8-to-4 job, but there are people in our neighborhood who work 2nd shift and 3rd shift that need for businesses to adhere to the existing rules about noise, about disruption, about preventing the quiet enjoyment of our property. We have had many interactions with folks at Hub Nashville and wonderful Metro police officers who have come by to respond to our repeated complaints, but we have not found our council member or codes more generally to be responsive to our repeated requests. If existing codes are not going to be enforced, why should residents of the neighborhood be in favor of liberalizing codes? Code enforcement cannot be heads you win, tails I lose. Code enforcement should be clear and consistent so that we can continue to live in the areas of town with density, diversity, and that support our tourism and our hospitality workers. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hester. We had a bit of a misunderstanding, thinking that you were speaking on, I guess, BL 2024-239, number 44, which was about the airport. So next on our agenda, sir, is the resolution about which you were speaking, which is on public hearing. So you will be duly noted on the record in that regard. So we are now, all folks who signed up for public comment have spoken, and so we will conclude that portion of our agenda. And moving now to section G, resolutions on public hearing. Spanish interpretation services are provided for both the public hearings this evening, this first regarding a beer permit, and then subsequently on our zoning public hearings. And so these interpretation services are provided by Ms. Sandra Obanda de Ruiz, and she is here to assist. Ms. Obanda de Ruiz, will you please share how you can help?
Buenas noches, yo voy a ser la intérprete en español para esta sesión. Cualquiera que necesite mi ayuda, estoy en la primera línea. Gracias.
Okay, thank you so much. So we are in Section G, Item 1, RS 2024-239. Sponsor Parker is a resolution exempting Skinny Dennis, located at 2635 Gallatin Avenue, from the minimum distance requirements for obtaining a beer permit pursuant to Section 7.08.09E of the Metropolitan Code. Mr. Parker, you are recognized, sir.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Committee reports, please.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Bradford, you're recognized, sir.
Government Operations, heard RS 2024-239. We approved 6 in favor, none against, and 0 not voting.
Okay. All right, it's back to you, Mr. Parker.
Thank you. I'd like to open the public hearing.
Okay. Let's see. I declare the public hearing open. Are there any folks here to speak in support of this measure? Okay. And okay, you may line up, please.
Thank you.
Okay, and just for members of the public, for your awareness, you do not have to provide your precise address, but you might want to explain how you are situated near to or in relation to this item on public hearing. So please go ahead, sir.
Sure. My name is Zephaniah O'Hora, and I live at 1027 Dozier Place. I'm one of the owners of Skinny Dennis Nashville. I've been the talent buyer at Skinny Dennis in Brooklyn since it opened its doors in 2013. While I'm not an owner of that location, it has created immense opportunities for me as a musician and a songwriter. Skinny Dennis has been a destination for independent musicians and songwriters around the country, and a very significant portion of those artists live here in Nashville. So it's been my dream since several years before the pandemic to open a location here. We chose this location at the corner of Carolyn and Gallatin because we wanted to add another venue option that was walkable for a local gathering space for neighbors in this part of East Nashville. As someone who lives just a couple blocks away, I'm keenly aware of the potential concerns around parking and noise. Since last year, I've attended 2 community meetings. I've knocked on over 100 doors in the immediate vicinity, and I've also listened to neighbors' concerns, and I've addressed them through creative parking solutions, an extensive soundproofing plan, which I appreciate your comments, sir. And that'll be one of the biggest expenses in the build out. So we take the soundproofing noise issue very seriously. And of course, making necessary safety improvements on the property. This open dialogue with nearby neighbors will continue even well after our doors open so that we can best serve the community to continue to address any concerns that may arise. We will be breathing new life into a vacant building and improve walkability, as well as sidewalk improvements for pedestrian safety. In addition to providing competitive compensation for musicians, bartenders, servers, and event staff, we'll provide a food program which is run by an award-winning chef, which we will offer also family-friendly events. It's my hope that many new friendships and life-changing opportunities will begin here at Skinny Dennis, Nashville. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Folks, please proceed to the podium. Let's not clap in between these, please. Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, everybody. My name is Brian Hay. I live in East Nashville at Gallatin and Delmas, right where the proposed Skinny Dennis would be. We came here 3 years ago because we love music. I know so many people come to this town because of it. We saw over 150 shows last year. It's much easier to get around than it is in other towns like LA and Chicago to see music. We are so excited as neighbors to have this new venue near us as other venues disappear in town. I have a 19-year-old who goes to school in Murfreesboro who is very excited that this will be a place he goes and plays music one day in addition to being a fan. And again, I can't imagine a better fit. You know, they have been great about addressing my concerns about parking. It has an excellent reputation in the business in Brooklyn as a place that not only takes care of the community, but takes care of musicians. And I hope you will approve this and we can have it in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Alex Abels from 932 Beacon Hall Avenue, and I stand before you today to advocate for a beer permit for Skinny Dennis. This isn't just about a permit, it's about supporting the soul of Music City, our musicians and creatives who are the heartbeat of Nashville. As of December 2023, the Bureau of Labor Statistics report that nearly 130,000 individuals in the Nashville metro area are employed in the leisure and hospitality industry. Among them are our cherished musicians and singers. However, the BLS estimates that the median income to be just under $42,000, which after taxes leaves a narrow monthly budget of around $3,000. Consider this. MIT's living wage calculator indicates that to live comfortably, a single adult in the Nashville metro area needs $49,500 annually. Our artists are striving to make ends meet for less than what is considered a living wage. Let's turn the clock back to 2015. A two-bedroom rental in East Nashville was about $800. Fast forward to 2022, that figure skyrocketed to up 75%. This means that rent alone now consumes 46% of an artist's take-home pay. So who truly crafted East Nashville into the desirable destination it is today? Was it the developers, the Broadway bars and their stars? Was it labels like Sony, Warner, Universal, or BMG? No, I assert that it was the creatives, the artists who, decade after decade, have woven the unique tapestry that is East Nashville. In East, we have places like 5 Points, the Tomato Art Fest, and the East Room that act as crucibles of creativity, platforms where individuals bestow upon us the greatest gift of all, art. If you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you'll know that beyond the basic physiological and safety needs like food, shelter, and health, therein lies the pinnacle of self-actualization. This is where a musician's pursuit of music, an artist's passion of painting, and a researcher's quest for knowledge reside. What defines a robust society is its culture, and Nashville has become an international beacon of culture, with East Nashville leading the way. For these reasons and more, I firmly believe that granting Skinny Dennis a beer permit is in favor.
Sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please, sir.
Hello, my name is Scott Hines. I live at 1213 Artie Avenue over in East Nashville. I'm a local musician, particularly a local roots musician. I played at Skinny Dennis in Brooklyn many times, and in addition to being a musician, I'm also a Nashville history tour guide. It's my job to bring 100 people a week around and just teach about Nashville history. And one thing I am super passionate about is the roots music that built Music City. And having played at Skinny Dennis many times in New York City and knowing Zephaniah, I know the passion for that type of music that Skinny Dennis in New York City carries. Skinny Dennis might be in Brooklyn, but it's built from the fabric of Tennessee, and it's built from the fabric that made Nashville Music City. Skinny Dennis in New York, it's a locals bar. It's not a tourist destination, party scene sort of thing. It has people who are truly passionate about roots music. I'm definitely here in support of that because Nashville deserves a Skinny Dennis here. Thank you.
You're next. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor, and hi, it's good to see you all. I'm Chelsea Mubarak. I live at 916B Fairwind Avenue. Really excited to be here speaking in favor of the project. I live just a couple blocks away. And I also want to note that we have a lot of neighbors on Fairwind, on Cahal, on Carolyn who couldn't be here tonight, but who also are really excited about this project. There is a lot of change coming to the Gallatin corridor, especially close to where we live, but I think this is one of the better things we're getting, especially because it is going to be this really cool locals walkable establishment. The building at this corner has been vacant for at least 2 to 3 years, and so this project is going to breathe so much life into it and really provide a space for us to gather. I'm actually here with several neighbors. There's some of us who have been planning neighborhood gatherings for the last 6 months. We do trivia nights, we have block parties, we had a big Halloween block party in the fall. And so this is just gonna be another place where we can continue to build and grow our budding community and relationships with each other. So we're really excited about that. I appreciate the fact that the management team of Skinny Dennis has addressed a lot of concerns I know around parking and noise. They're going to be soundproofing the entire building. It's not going to be like Cobra. Sorry to say that, Cobra, but you blast music on your back porch. So that we're not going to be having a situation like that here. And yeah, I think we all just can't wait to be hearing this great world-renowned music, eating New Orleans food, and spending a lot of great quality time with each other. So thanks again. Thanks, Sean Parker, for everything you do for our district, and I hope you'll pass this resolution. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Mubarak. Is anyone in opposition seeking to speak? Please come forward.
Hello, thanks. I'm Phyllis Krim. I live at 1028 Carolyn. Okay, I grew up in East Nashville, and it's not always been a property hotspot, especially Cahal and Gallatin. Fortunately, young families with strollers and dogs have finally returned to the neighborhood. I care about my community. Up until last year, I would pick up the litter twice a week up and down the road, paint over graffiti on this building, weed eat the gully that runs down between this building and my house, because the taller the grass, the bigger the rats. I'm here pleading for a little help on this ordinance that's been on the Tennessee books forever. Churches, schools, and homes must be 100 feet. The third driveway up the road past my house is 100 feet. I'm 23 feet from this building, and it's closer than you think when it's a music bar 7 days a week, 3P to 3A. If you really want a live music venue, there's 30 bars on Broadway, not next to my home. Pause for a moment. If this was your neighborhood and your home, you wouldn't want this to be there. The impact from this bar will be a neighborhood tragedy, and everyone will have to tolerate the chaos it will bring. Ones in favor of this venue will never be affected by the loud, rowdy drinkers coming and going all night long. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else? Yes, Mr. Hester, you may speak again, sir.
May I simply be assured that my comments will be entered into the correct part of the record?
Yes, sir.
Prior comments?
Yes, sir. And if you would like to provide abbreviated comments or add anything,
very
you
briefly
may.
then. Yeah,
You may.
I'm very grateful for all the folks that are speaking in favor of this. Again, my argument is not against Skinny Dennis or where they'll be or the folks that are going to be doing it. My argument is that neighbors in this neighborhood are deeply disappointed with our council representation, deeply disappointed with code enforcement. And again, it cannot be a matter of the letter of the law for us, the spirit of the law for business owners. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Hester. Is anyone else seeking to speak in opposition? Okay, seeing none, I declare the public hearing closed, and it's back to you, Councilman Parker, for a motion, sir.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. And thanks to everybody who came out to speak in both support and opposition of this beer permit distance waiver. I'd like to move for approval with a brief comment.
Go ahead, sir. Is there a second? Okay.
So we've had, as a neighborhood, now 3 meetings about this proposal. I think that initially there were a lot of folks who were very concerned about the kind of spillover impacts, not so much the venue itself, but parking and noise and things like that. And I do have to say that I appreciate the business owner for working closely with the community to address those concerns, to find off-site strategies for parking, to work with other business owners who have lots available in the evenings that can be utilized. Also, the plans for soundproofing the venue give me some confidence that we won't face issues similar to the venue that a couple of folks mentioned we have issues with on Gallatin in the area. That venue does have a back porch area where they're now hosting outdoor performances, which is not allowed, but we have not really been successful in enforcing that up to this point. So hopefully we will be able to enforce that, but I don't want to hold every business owner who might be looking to come to the community accountable for something that one particular business is doing wrong. I've talked extensively with the business owners and with the neighbors, and at this point, I am confident that they're going to adequately address both the parking and the noise concerns. There will not be a back area where music could be performed at this venue, as there is at the one that was mentioned earlier. So with that, I think the concerns are going to be addressed, and I appreciate the business owners for reaching out to the neighbors as much as they have and working with them. And so I'll just renew my motion for approval here.
Okay, there is a motion to approve, properly seconded, with the explanation from Councilman Parker. Is anyone seeking to be recognized for discussion? Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Any voting no or any abstaining? Okay, this has passed on public hearing. This resolution has passed. Thank you. Okay. Now then, we're moving into the second phase of our public hearing, section H, which is bills on public hearing. This is also known as our zoning public hearing. And again, Ms. Obando de Ruiz remains here and available for anyone needing interpretation services. So agenda item 2, BL 2023-116, sponsor Benton, is an ordinance to amend Title 17 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws, the zoning ordinance of the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County, by amending a planned unit development on property located at 2361 Murfreesboro Pike, east of Una Antioch Pike, zoned R10, and within a planned unit development overlay district. It's 14.84 acres to permit vocational school uses. Quiet, please. Vocational school uses, all of which is described herein. Councilman Benton, you are recognized, sir.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'd like to move to defer to April the 2nd.
Okay, Councilman Benton has moved to defer this item on public hearing to the April 2nd public hearing. Do I hear a second for that motion? Okay. Properly moved and properly seconded. Is there any discussion on the deferral? Okay, all in favor of the deferral, please say aye. Any voting no or abstaining? Okay, this item is deferred to the April 2nd public hearing. Okay, agenda item 3, BL 2023-118, sponsor Benton, is an ordinance to amend Title 17 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws, the zoning ordinance of the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County, by changing 1 from AR2A to IR for property located at Donaldson Pike, unnumbered, at the southwest corner of Citation Drive and Ezel Pike, 24.42 acres, all of which is described herein. Mr. Benton, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'd like to open the public hearing.
Okay, thank you, sir. I declare the public hearing open. Will all those in favor of this item please raise your hands? Okay, are there any in opposition? Would you please raise your hands? Seeing no opposition, does the gentleman here in favor wish to speak? Okay, with that, seeing no one here wishing to speak, I declare the public hearing closed. And it's back to you then, Mr. Benton, for a motion on your bill.
I'd like to move approval, please.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, properly moved and properly seconded. Is there any discussion on this bill? Okay, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any voting no or abstaining? Okay. Moving on now to agenda item 4, BL 2023-120, sponsors Gamble, Allen, Rutherford, and Hancock, is an ordinance to amend Title 17 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws, the zoning ordinance of the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County, to amend Chapters 17.04, 17.12, and 17.40 pertaining to lot averaging, all of which is described herein. Ms. Gamble, you are recognized.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'd like to open the public hearing.
Okay. I declare the public hearing open. Would all those in favor of this bill please raise your hands? Are there any in opposition to this bill? Would you please raise your hands? Okay. Seeing one in opposition, you're welcome to come forward, and you do not, okay, not seeking to be recognized. Anyone else seeking to be recognized? Okay. Seeing none, I declare the public hearing closed and go back to you, Ms. Gamble, as the sponsor for a motion on your bill.
Yes, I'd like to move for approval.
Okay. Is there a second? Okay, properly moved, properly seconded. We are now on discussion. Is anyone seeking to be recognized? Okay, I see we have an amendment in the packet. Does anyone related to the amendment seeking to be recognized? Okay, Ms. Evans-Siegel?
Yes, I would like to move the amendment with brief comment.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, properly moved and seconded for an explanation of your amendment.
Thank you. I would just note that it originally was a little confusing based on the drafting of this, whether or how exactly the open space percentages work. But in addition, it relied on plan to play, which specifically required the public park space be public, that we have amenities for the public to use. And there was no incentive within this law to create public spaces. It just required more private spaces that would not be allowed to be used by the people of this county who do not live in the particular subdivision. So this amendment is just to encourage that. It does not require it. If it doesn't work with Parks, if Parks doesn't want it, they can certainly deny it. It just provides an additional option and a small incentive to developers who are willing to provide public amenities for the residents of Davidson County.
Okay, Ms. Evans-Siegel has moved her amendment. It has been seconded. She has given you a description of the amendment. So now we are on discussion of the amendment, and we will acknowledge the bill's sponsor, Ms. Gamble, regarding the amendment. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I have a question for the planning table. If you could speak to how this amendment impacts the original intention of the bill as approved by the Metro Planning Commission.
Ms. Milligan, you're recognized to respond to Ms. Gamble's inquiry.
Thank you. Sure. So there are a couple of things in the bill that I wanted to touch on, in the amendment to the bill. So the first is that there is an allowed reduction that's worked into the bill as recommended by the Planning Commission, wherein you can reduce the amount of open space within any given compact subdivision based on being near parks or other areas as identified. However, the Planning Commission's recommended version indicates that the total amount of open space cannot be less than 10% total. The amendment as proposed allows that to go down to 7.5%. And so because the proposed amendment requires essentially less open space than the version that the Planning Commission reviewed and made an approval on, then this would make the Planning Commission's, if this is added to the bill, it would make the Planning Commission's recommendation a disapproval. So typically with Planning Commission recommendations, if there are amendments, then if they are equally or more restrictive than what the Planning Commission recommended, then the Planning Commission's recommendation stays. But if it is less restrictive than what the Planning Commission recommended, then generally it would be, it would make the recommendation a disapproval. And so because this would require less open space, it would be less restrictive. The second thing is, the second part is that it adds an allowance for greenways to be counted towards that. Well, hold on, that might not be in there anymore. Never mind. That's it. I think it's just the one.
Okay. Ms. Gamble, back to you.
Yes, I have another question. If you could speak to how this relates to the park and play plan or any analysis that you did in regards to the park and play plan, as well as the relation to greenways and access to greenways, how this amendment would impact that.
Sure. So we, when we were looking at the parcels that would be available for compact development, we did look at them in relation to proximity to parks, to municipal and state-owned parks, so that we could determine which properties might be eligible to have the reduction of the open space based on those locations. And so our analysis was, we did do analysis based on that. I think the greenway, I had thought that there was originally an allowance to count greenways, but I don't see that that is in here now. So, yes. So, but we did look at it in relation. I think there is some, we recognize the language that's in plan to play in regards to the need for more publicly accessible open space. But we also sort of understand the desire for there to also be privately accessible open space. And they're sort of two different types of open space, and neither negates the other. Essentially, they're just for different purposes.
Ms. Gamble, it's back to you to reclaim some time as the administration has spoken kind of.
Thank you, and thank you for that explanation about how the amendment would make the bill, as approved by the Planning Commission, disapproved, how it would reduce the amount of open space that the bill currently requires within subdivisions. I know as we are looking at increasing housing in our area, we're also wanting to make sure that we balance that with preserving open space, which is what, preserving our nice natural features and resources here in Nashville, which makes Nashville so unique. And so for those reasons, I am speaking against the amendment. Not only does it fit within the approved plan or within the approved intention of the bill, but it also doesn't help with quality of life or preserving the natural resources in our city. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Gamble. Next is Ms. Johnston. You're recognized.
Thank you. I don't want to repeat anything that Councilmember Councilmember Gamble, sorry, just said, because I agree with everything that she said. What you want to avoid is having something coming out of the Planning Commission disapproved. And so if that's what we're going to do, I think people should listen to what our Planning Commission and Planning Department is saying. One of the questions that I have is if the amendment was to pass, it becomes disapproved, and you increase publicly accessible, you're reducing the private lot, the lot size of the privately owned, but you're increasing the publicly accessed. Who's going to be maintaining that? Like, does that not add to an HOA or to some sort of public? I think there's definitely a fiscal note that's going to be attached to that. With that, I mean, I don't know that that's something that you can answer because it would be probably development by development. But just understanding that there's aspects to this that I think you can try to answer.
Ms. Milligan, you're recognized to respond to that question.
Sure. So the amendment doesn't require publicly accessible open space. There's just an option in there that allows for for the open space that is in the development to be publicly accessible. And so so it's not requiring it
Okay.
for it to be publicly accessible.
Okay, so you're looking at a situation where you have a development that's being planned, and there's going to be some type of open space there, whether it's just green space or a playground or something, and they're saying this would say, give it an option to make it publicly accessible for anybody and everybody to come into, even though the HOA or whatever entity is maintaining that would be at that point responsible. I think this is getting into rights of people to say, like, well, then who's responsible for the liability of someone that comes in and possibly gets hurt that's not part of the HOA? I mean, there's just a lot of complications I think that this would create. But again, it will make the bill disapproved, which I think you want, again, to try to avoid at all costs. So I would speak against this amendment, please. Thank you.
Okay, Councilwoman Allen, you're recognized.
Thank you. This is a math question. And it relates to the amendment. Matt, the way I read the bill is when we talk about the quote 5% of open space reduction, if you've got 5,000 square feet of open space and you reduce that by 5%, then that's 2,500 square feet that you've gotten rid of. So when I do the math on the amendment, I don't get 7,500 square feet that you were. I had to do the math with a 100,000 square foot piece of property, because otherwise I couldn't figure out what all these percentages were. So if we start with 100,000 square feet and we say you have to have 15% open space, that's 15,000 square feet of open space. And then if you have to have 5,000 feet of usable open space, 5% would be 5,000. So I could keep up with the math that way. But then when you start talking about a 5% reduction of your open space, and my open space was 15,000 square feet, then that only puts me down to 14,250. So it doesn't get me down to that 7,500. So all that to say, I think regardless of whether we accept this amendment or not, can we clarify that language so that someone doesn't come back and do goofy math with it like I'm doing right here and significantly reduce the amount of open space because they interpret it a different way from y'all?
Yeah, and we have,
You're recognized, Ms. Milligan, from the Planning Department. Thank you.
yes, and we have a lot of examples too where we've worked all of those out. I think the important part to point out is in the language where you're allowed to reduce up to 5%. If you're located within that area to a park, that you're not allowed in any event to actually reduce, for the open space to be less than 10% of the total. And the amendment would say that you don't have to be less than 7.5%. And so that's where the issue is with it being less restrictive, is that the Planning Commission put a sort of a floor that you can't go below.
Okay. Ms. Allen, any other comment or inquiry?
I appreciate that explanation. I may talk to you before third reading just to see if that language could be.
Right. As a reminder to new members and members of the community, Title 17 bills are amendable on third reading. Ms. Evans-Siegel, you are recognized.
Thank you for recognizing me. I just want to clarify. So first, we can definitely, as a body, pass something that is disapproved by the Planning Commission. Given the few people who objected to this today, it would surprise me if the 27 vote threshold is too hard for us to meet. As far as who takes care of it, how would that work? That is a conversation to be had with parks that is site specific. I think we all have been approached. I know I've been all over this county and heard stories of folks approaching the Parks Department and saying, I'd like to donate this. I would like to work on an agreement with you, a partnership with you. And that's site specific. And every time Parks looks at that, they have to say, is this appropriate? How do we manage it? What are the agreements in place? This just creates a very, very modest incentive that says, if you can come to an agreement on creating public space that can be used by all residents, we will let your subdivision have a little bit less open space that is reserved just for your residents because you're creating a public good for all residents. I would not expect that this is right for every subdivision. I would not expect that the Parks Department would think that this is right. It just provides an incentive to have a conversation where we say what is right for everybody in Davidson County How can we create pathways and incentives for people to provide goods to everybody instead of to the select few who can buy into these subdivisions?
Okay, Mr. Rutherford, you are recognized, sir.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise in opposition to the amendment. I know that there are circumstances where we pass a disapproved bill. I personally believe this should not be one of those instances. I would like to ask of planning a question. I've not done the math like Councilmember Allen, but is there a middle ground, if you will, somewhere between the amendment and the bill itself that would allow for it to be to move forward without being a disapproved bill? Otherwise, I'm certainly opposed to the amendment. Thank you.
Ms. Milligan, you're recognized.
Because the Planning Commission, Planning Commission recommended version indicated that it can't go below 10%, then if it goes below 10%, it's disapproved because it would be less restrictive than what the Planning Commission recommended.
Mr. Rutherford, do you?
So just confirming that's essentially where we are now then, right? We're at that threshold.
Right. The Planning Commission recommended approval of a bill that includes allowances for reduction, but nothing below 10%. Right. And so the amended would take it down, would allow to go to 7.5%. And so there is not a movement to decrease it. Any decrease would be less restrictive than what the Planning Commission approved.
Thank you for that. And I just restate then my opposition to the amendment. Thank you.
Okay. Next in the queue is primary sponsor Gamble. Do you want to be recognized again or on? Okay. Go ahead, Ms. Gamble.
Thank you. Just want to ask another question in regards to some of the statements today. It was stated that parks would be, I guess, responsible for helping maintain these spaces if they were open to the public. In your analysis or review of the bill prior to the Planning Commission recommendation, could you speak to groups, neighborhood groups, other groups that that were involved in the planning and design of the bill, as well as if Parks was one of those agencies, and if they are aware or have any position on handling the maintenance of these particular open spaces in private subdivisions.
Ms. Milligan, you're recognized.
Sure. So what's before you is the product of probably a couple of years worth of work. It started out as a process of analyzing our cluster lot provisions, which resulted in the creation of the conservation subdivision or conservation development type of development, which is in the zoning code, which is primarily a tool for really sensitive sites that have topographic challenges or a lot of tree cover. And so this is seen by planning and the Planning Commission as being the partner to that conservation, where this is more intended for sites that don't have those same types of constraints. And so in that process, we had a couple of stakeholder groups that included neighborhood leaders from various neighborhoods. In the when we started out with conservation, we had a lot of people that were focused on conservation and tree preservation and those sorts of things. And so when we shifted to compact, we sort of reached out to other types of folks to make sure that we had a broad look from the community. We reached out to neighbor and some neighborhood leaders and developers and engineers, and even test fit a lot of the compact to make sure that it actually worked. And so I don't know that I can name anybody specifically, but I've got all of that if we need it. To your second question, Parks is involved in any review of subdivisions so that they can look at and see if there's a need for greenway easements, if it's something that's indicated along a greenway trail. I will say that it's not uncommon, and we've had conversations with Parks related to private developments that want to update land and then have Parks take that over. And so that happens sort of now, and those conversations do happen on an individualized basis. So, yes, does that?
Oh, okay, Ms. Campbell, very briefly, please, ma'am. We've got some other
Yeah,
folks in the queue.
Thank you.
on the
I have
amendment.
a follow-up, if I can ask the same question of the sponsor of the amendment. What kind of analysis or group input and involvement went into the development of the amendment?
Okay, I guess I will acknowledge Ms. Evans Siegel for a brief response to that, please, ma'am.
Yes, so the planning department reached out to me in the fall to talk about this bill, and we discussed the problems with relying on Plan to Play to create privately accessible spaces. Plan to Play, as many of us know, specifically calls for private partnerships for creating public spaces for public good for everybody to use. That was a report that was years in the making that we are relying on. The amendment was drafted. We went back and forth with the planning department, had phone calls, discussed edits to that before it was filed. But the planning that went into that really is the groundwork of Plan to Play and all the hard work that went in to creating that and calling for a better park system, a park system that we know all our residents deserve, regardless of whether or not they can buy into a new subdivision.
Okay, now to Ms. Hancock.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I wasn't going to stand up, but then I just wanted to voice my opposition to the amendment as well, because I wanted to give voice to others that might not have stood up. Just because 3 people voice their opposition doesn't mean those are the only 3 people that are opposed. I do understand the background and the want to from the particular amendment that has been brought forward, and I would encourage the sponsor to maybe consider tabling it for now and bringing it back at third. Since this is still amendable at third reading, they could work with planning in the meantime, but otherwise I'm not in favor of the amendment today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hancock. Ms. Weiner, you are recognized.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I have a question for Ms. Milligan.
Okay, can you pose the question, and then I'll recognize Ms. Milligan.
Thank you so much. I would like to know how peer cities handle this. Do they provide more or less open space in terms of the percentages that they allow or don't allow?
Ms. Milligan, you're recognized to respond to that.
I know one example where someone requires 20%, but I don't know that I just have all of that data in my head. Believe it or not, it's just not all up here. So I don't know that I can answer that. I mean, I will say that the percentages of open space that we may or may not require in a development really depend on the context. Like conservation requires more because the goal there is to preserve trees or sensitive land, and so it requires more. The goal here is different for compact. It requires open space, but it's not around preservation. The goal here is to allow flexibility of design, to allow for smaller lots so that we can get sort of different types of housing. So the goals are just different. And so I don't know that there is necessarily just a standard because it would vary based on what the goal of the tool is. And we just see this as another tool.
Okay, so I have 2 more questions. My next question would be, so the 10% was established as a variable given the circumstances in which you might find yourself depending on where you are, right?
So
Ms. Milligan, go ahead.
Sorry.
So the minimum for conservation is 20%. And so the minimum for compact is 15%. So it's less, like the sort of absolute minimum. But then we've said recognizing that we do have these great public amenities, parks. If you're within a certain distance of a park, we will let you even have less open space, down to 10%, because we have great amenities and we want people to be able to sort of utilize those amenities. And so, because the goals were different between the two tools, we were comfortable with setting it lower than it was for conservation, and then also allowing it to be reduced further down to 10% based on public amenities.
Great, I appreciate it. That's helpful information, and I too will rise in opposition to the amendment. Thank you.
Okay. Not seeing anyone else seeking to speak on the amendment in particular, we are going to move to a vote on the amendment, and knowing that we will have votes against. Mr. Clerk, if you would please open the machine. So we are on BL 2023-120, sponsors Gamble, Allen, Rutherford, and Hancock. And this is a proposed amendment to that bill. You've heard the discussion. That amendment is proposed by Ms. Evans-Siegel. So, Mr. Clerk, please open the machines on the vote for the amendment, for or against the amendment, please. Okay, with all votes in, please close the machines and show the vote, Mr. Clerk. Okay, the motion to amend fails. So we are back on the bill. Ms. Gamble, it's back to you for a motion. Oh, I apologize, Ms. Gamble. Go ahead.
Thank you. Move for approval.
Okay, do I hear a second? Okay, Ms. Gamble has moved, properly seconded for approval on second reading. All in favor, please say aye. Yep, Ms. Discussion, thank you. Rise, Ms. Allen, say point of order, it's okay. Yes, would you, I do apologize. We had a lot of discussion on the amendment, but we are back on the main bill, and it is still time for discussion. Are you seeking to be recognized, not just for your point of order, but also for discussion? Okay, go ahead, Ms. Allen, you're recognized.
This is not a major question, but just wanted to check. Because we always come back around to affordable housing, and the creation of open space has been discussed with the context of an HOA, which to me means HOA fees. Is there any way to have a scenario where there's not that added cost to a homeowner?
Ms. Milligan, you are recognized.
So what we tried to do was to make sure that there was a range of open space options that would count. So we're not saying everyone has to have a pool house. Like you can count if there happens to be a grove of trees, you can preserve that grove of trees and that counts. So then the minimum, the cost, if there is one, should be pretty minimal. And so what we tried to do was offer a range. And then for smaller, don't have to have like an amenity per se. But that's what we tried to do, was just be flexible in regards to what counts.
So within that range, there's a possibility of not having that?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, is anyone else seeking to be recognized on Ms. Gamble's bill on second reading? Okay, seeing no one else seeking to be recognized for discussion, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any voting no? Okay, any abstaining? Okay, Ms. Darby, we have one no vote. Can we so recognize it, or? Okay, Ms. Evans-Siegel will be recognized, please, Mr. Clerk, as voting no. Okay, So this has passed on second reading. Okay, so then now moving on to agenda item 5, BL 2023-129, sponsor Bradford, is an ordinance to amend Title 17 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws, the zoning ordinance of the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County by canceling a planned unit development overlay district for property located at 1210 Murfreesboro Pike, approximately 480 feet southeast of Kermit Drive, 2.89 acres, Zone CL, all of which is described herein. Mr. Bradford, you are recognized, sir.
Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. As I see no committee reports at this time, I request to open the public hearing.
Okay, I declare the public hearing open. Will all those in favor of this bill please raise your hands? Okay, I'm seeing none. Would all in opposition to this bill please raise your hand? Also seeing none. Okay, no one seeking to be recognized on this bill in the public hearing. Okay, with that, I declare the public hearing closed, and it is back to you, Mr. Bradford, for a motion.
Thank you. I move to approve, pass on second reading with a brief comment.
Okay, go ahead, please, sir.
I just want to point out that this is another opportunity where we're taking a hotel that has long been an issue in the area in terms of crime and other issues, and a developer is converting it into workforce housing on one of our most used public transit corridors in the city. So I'm really looking forward to seeing this development take off, and hope to see more type of developments, not just in my district, but across the city as we utilize some of these old hotels and motels for workforce housing. Thank you.
Okay, you've heard Mr. Bradford's motion and a brief explanation. Did I hear a second on this for approval? Okay, is there any discussion on Mr. Bradford's bill? Okay, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any voting no? Any abstaining? Okay, this passes on second reading. Okay, agenda item 6, BL 2023-134, sponsor Greg, is an ordinance to amend Title 17 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws, the zoning ordinance of the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County, by changing from CS to MULNS zoning for properties located at 801 and 828 Royal Parkway, east of the corner of Royal Parkway and Airport Center Drive, 10.68 acres, within a planned unit development overlay district, all of which is described herein. Councilman Gregg, you are recognized, sir.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I move to defer to the April 2nd public hearing.
Okay, you've heard a motion to defer the public hearing to the meeting of April 2nd. Is there a second? Okay, properly moved, properly seconded. Is there any discussion on this deferral? Okay, seeing none, you are voting on the motion to defer the public hearing, second reading to April 2nd. All in favor, please say aye. Any voting no, any abstaining? Okay, seeing none, BL 2023-134 will be on the public hearing at the meeting of April 2nd. Thank you, Councilman Gregg. Agenda item 7, BL 2023-135, also sponsored Gregg, an ordinance to amend Title 17 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws and the zoning ordinance of the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County by canceling a planned unit development overlay district on properties located at 801 and 828 Royal Parkway, east of the corner of Royal Parkway and Airport Center Drive, Zone CS, 10.6 acres, and located within a planned unit development overlay district, all of which is described herein, sir. So the companion bill to your first bill, which we could have taken together, sir. But go ahead. Do you have a motion?
Yes, Vice Mayor, I'd like to defer to the April 2nd public hearing.
Okay. There is a motion to defer this companion bill to April 2nd. Properly seconded. Is there any discussion on that deferral? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of the deferral to April 2nd, please say aye. Aye. Any voting no and any abstaining? Okay. All right, that is also deferred to April 2nd. Okay. All right, so we have come to the end of our zoning public hearing, and so now we are moving into the portion of our agenda that is the consolidated consent agenda. For the consolidated consent agenda, all resolutions and second and third reading ordinances on this agenda are included on the consent agenda, if recommended for approval unanimously by all the committees to which the item was referred. Items on the consent agenda will be voted on at a single time. The item number, along with the resolution and ordinance number of the items on the consent agenda, will be read. A little bit slowly, perhaps, but so that they can be clearly displayed and seen on monitors and recordings at home. And members of council may remove any item from the consent agenda by request before the consent agenda vote is taken. Okay. All right. So I am now going to read the item and bill numbers of all the resolutions on consent. Okay? Okay, agenda item 10, RS 2024-241. Agenda item 11, RS 2024-242. Agenda item 12, RS 2024-243. Agenda item 13, RS 2024-1. Okay. Ms. Darby has asked me to read more slowly, so let the record show. Okay, agenda item 13. RS 2024-244. Agenda item 14, RS 2024-245. Agenda item 15, RS 2024-246. RS 2024-247. Agenda item 17, RS 2024-248. Agenda item 18, Resolution 2024-249. Agenda item 19, Resolution 2024-250. Agenda item 20, Resolution 2024-251. Agenda item 21, Resolution 2024-252. Agenda item 22, Resolution 2024-253. Agenda item 23, Resolution 2024-254. Agenda item 24, Resolution 2024-255. Agenda item 25, Resolution 2024-256. Agenda item 26, Resolution 2024-257. Agenda item 27, Resolution 2024-258. Agenda item 28, resolution 2024-259. Agenda item 29, resolution 2024-260. Agenda item 30, resolution 2024-261. Agenda item 31, resolution 2024-262. Agenda item 32, resolution 2024-263. And then agenda item 33, resolution 2024-264. Okay, so those are the resolutions on consent. I'm going to continue through the consent agenda, colleagues, okay? So now I'm going to read the items and the bill numbers also on second reading. Remember, there will be time at the end of both resolutions, or rather thrice second and third reading consent for you to remove items from the consent agenda if needed. So the bills that are on second reading consent are agenda item 59, BL 2024-180. Agenda item 60, BL 2024-189. Agenda item 61, ordinance BL 2024-190. Agenda item 62, ordinance BL 2024-191. Agenda item 64, ordinance BL 2024-193. Agenda item 65, ordinance BL 2024-194. Agenda item 66, ordinance BL 2024-195. Agenda item 67, ordinance BL 2024-196. Agenda item 68, ordinance BL 2024-197. Agenda item 69, ordinance BL 2024-198. Agenda item 70, ordinance BL 2024-199. Agenda item 71, ordinance BL 2024-200. Agenda item 72, ordinance BL 2024-201. Agenda item 73, ordinance BL 2024-202. Agenda item 74, ordinance BL 2024-203. Agenda item 75, ordinance BL 2024-204. Agenda item 76, ordinance BL 2024-205. Agenda item 77, ordinance BL 2024-206. Agenda item 78, ordinance BL 2024-207. Agenda item 79, ordinance BL 2024-208. Agenda item 80, ordinance BL 2024-209. Agenda item 81, ordinance BL 2024-210. Okay, I will now continue ahead on the agenda. We are still on the consolidated consent agenda, and so now I will be reading items on third reading that are on the consent agenda. The first among them is agenda item 84, ordinance BL 2023-138. Agenda item 85, ordinance BL 2024-152. Agenda item 86, ordinance BL 2024-153. Agenda item 87, ordinance BL 2024-155. Agenda item 88, ordinance BL 2024-156. Agenda item 89, ordinance BL 2024-157. Agenda item 90, ordinance BL 2024-158. Agenda item 91, ordinance BL 2024-159. Agenda item 92, ordinance BL 2024-160. Agenda item 93, ordinance BL 2024-161. Agenda item 94, ordinance BL 2024-162. Agenda item 95, ordinance BL 2024-163. Agenda item 96, ordinance BL 2024-164. Agenda item 97, ordinance BL 2024-165. Agenda item 98, ordinance BL 2024-166. Agenda item 99, ordinance BL 2024-167. Agenda item 100, ordinance BL 2024-168. Agenda item 101, ordinance BL 2024-169. Agenda item 102, ordinance BL 2024-170. Okay, next is agenda item 104, ordinance BL 2024-172. Next is agenda item 105, Ordinance BL 2024-173. Agenda item 106, ordinance BL 2024-174. Agenda item 107, ordinance BL 2024-175. Agenda item 108, ordinance BL 2024-176. Agenda item 109, ordinance BL 2024-177. And lastly, agenda item 110, ordinance BL 2024-178. Okay, so that concludes the reading of all the items and numbers that are on the consolidated consent agenda, resolutions, second reading ordinances, and third reading ordinances. Now, are there any members seeking to remove items from the consolidated consent agenda? Ms. Gamble, but Ms. Toombs, do you seek to be recognized? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to go to you, Ms. Toombs. The item that you mentioned to us on the days prior was pulled.
Oh, it was already pulled?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. Not seeing Ms. Gamble, I will go to Mr. Coupin. You are recognized, sir.
Could you please pull item number 26, RS 2024-257?
Okay. Ms. Gamble, are you, okay, so just to reaffirm, agenda item 26, Mr. Coupin, resolution 2024-257 has been pulled from the consolidated consent agenda. Okay, I see you're no longer seeking to be recognized. Okay, members, anyone else seeking to pull something from the consolidated consent agenda? Excellent. Just 2 items. Are you kidding me, Ms. Swara? No, seriously, are you seeking? Okay, woo, okay. All righty, just want to make sure we're crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's. Okay. Okay, with that, now we will move into committee reports. Okay. Okay, so this is committee reports for items on consent. Budget Chair Porterfield, you are recognized for your report, please, ma'am.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Budget and Finance Committee considered the following items. RS 2024-241, passed 15 in favor, 0 against, 0 abstaining. RS 2024-242, 15 in favor, 0 against, 0 abstaining. 243, 13 in favor, 0 against, 0 abstaining. 244, 15, 0, 0. 245, 15, 0, 0. 246, 15, 0, 0. 247, 15, 0, 0.
If you want, you can kind of combine them if the votes are the same. and then
Okay.
you can
I just
say
didn't know
with
if
a
you could
vote-
write that fast.
Right,
All right,
but
Vice Mayor.
If you were to say slowly with a vote of 15 and 0, we
All right, I
recommended
got you,
approval
Vice
of-
Mayor.
Okay,
So
thank you, I
from
appreciate you.
items 244 down to 249 are 15 in favor, 0 against, 0 abstaining. Items 250 and 251 are 13, 0, 0. Items 252 down to 257 are 15, 0, 0. Items 258 to 260 are 13, 0, 0. Item 261 is 15, 0, 0. Item BL 2024-189 is 1200. And items BL 2024-190 and 191 are 1500.
Thank you very much, Chair Porterfield, for your report. Next, Councilman Bradford, Chair of Government Operations. It's to you, sir, for your report on all items on the consolidated consent agenda.
Resolution RS 2024-242, 243, 255, and 256. We all voted 6 in favor, none against. Bills on second reading, BL 2024-180. We voted to approve, 6 in favor, none against.
Thank you, sir, for your report. Next, it is to Planning and Zoning Chair Jennifer Gamble. You are recognized, please, ma'am.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Resolution 240, Planning and Zoning recommended approval, 11 in favor, 0 against. Resolution 241 and 260, recommended approval, 9 in favor, 0 against. Bills on second reading.
Just to clarify, Ms. Gamble, 240 is not on the consent agenda.
Oh,
Okay?
thank you,
So
thank you.
241 and 260 are both recommended for approval.
Yes, 9 in
Okay.
favor, 0 against.
Great.
Bills on second reading, 189 through 210. Recommended approval, 9 in favor, 0 against. Bills on third reading. Bill 2023, that has an amendment. It was 133 on consent.
No, ma'am, you have 138 on consent on third reading.
138, recommended approval, 11 in favor, 0 against.
Okay, thank you very much, ma'am. Okay, let's see, we have one more committee report from Public Facilities, Arts, and Culture Chair Stiles. You are recognized, Chair Stiles.
Thank you very much, Vice Mayor. Public Facilities, Arts, and Culture voted for RS 2024-247 and also 248, and that was 7 in favor, 0 against.
Okay, and Chair Stiles, y'all, it's stapled, so I didn't. Okay, got it. Okay, thank you. Turning the page. I'll think about that for next time. Okay, so continuing with reports on the consolidated consent agenda, I was thinking, okay. Chair Evans, Chair of Public Health and Safety, you are recognized. Please, ma'am.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Public Health and Safety considered RS 2024-244, 245, 246, 249, all with 8 in favor, 0 against. Item number RS 2024-250 was 9 in favor, 0 against. And then we go back to RS 2024-251, 252, and 253 were all 8 in favor, 0 against. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am, for that report. Let's see, next to, I'm going to go to Chair Sepulveda. That's okay, it's okay. It's like T for transportation, so it's like the last alphabetical committee. There's not quite a logic there. Ms. Sepulveda, Chair of Rules, Confirmations, and Public Elections, you are recognized, ma'am.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Rules considered RS 2024-262, 263, and 264. We voted 5 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. And now, Chair Parker of Transportation and Infrastructure, you are recognized, sir, for your report on the consolidated consent agenda.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Transportation and Infrastructure considered RS 2024. RS 2024, 258, 259, and 260. We recommended approval, 10 in favor, 0 against, and 0 not voting. Bills on second reading, we considered BL 2024-190, 191, and 193 through 210. And we recommended approval of all those, 10 in favor, 0 against, and 0 not voting. And with all committee reports being in, I will move approval of the consolidated consent agenda.
Thank you so much, Chair Parker. Is there a second? Okay. Is there any discussion on the consolidated consent agenda? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Any voting no or any abstaining? Okay, you have adopted the consolidated consent agenda. Okay. Okay, now, with that, we are going to move back to resolutions that were not on consent. Okay, the first among those is Agenda Item 8, Resolution 2024-194, sponsor Porterfield. You are recognized. Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. Let me read the caption. I get so used to not reading those captions. But for items not on consent, an initial resolution determining to issue general obligation bonds of the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County in an aggregate principal amount of not to exceed $514,055,000. Chair Porterfield, you are recognized.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. For the committee report, Budget and Finance approved the legislation, 15 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting, and I would like to move for approval.
Okay, there's a motion to approve, properly seconded. Okay, we're on discussion. Ms. Toombs, I see that there is a proposed amendment. As part of discussion, are you wishing to move your amendment?
The amendment was not moved in committee, Vice Mayor.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the clarification. Okay, alrighty, so there is a motion to approve, properly seconded. Is anyone else seeking to discuss this bill? Or resolution, rather? All, okay, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. But, yes, Ms. Porterfield?
I was just saying aye.
Okay. Alrighty then. Any voting no and any abstaining? Any no votes or abstentions? Okay, not seeing any. All right. You have adopted the capital spending plan resolution. Okay. That's a big thing, y'all. Okay. All righty. Agenda Item 9, the next resolution not on consent. Resolution 2024-240 sponsors Porterfield, Gamble, and Coupon is a resolution providing amendment to RS 2022-1696 to change the date that unobligated funds left in the Affordable Housing Gap Financing AHGF program will be transferred to the Barnes Fund for Affordable Housing. Okay, to you, Chair Porterfield.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. For committee reports, Budget and Finance considered this piece of legislation and voted 15 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. They also considered the substitute, and it also passed 15-0-0.
Okay, all righty. Chair Gamble, you're recognized for your committee report, please.
Planning and Zoning recommended approval, 11 in favor, 0 against.
And would that be the same for the proposed substitute as well, Ms. Gamble?
Yes, thank you. As substituted, 11 in favor, 0 against.
Okay, as substituted. Got it. Okay, it's back to you, Ms. Porterfield, as the primary sponsor for a motion.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'd like to move the substitute.
Okay. Let's see. Do we have a motion to have that before us, or do we go straight into committee reports without?
I did go
motion?
straight to committee
Okay,
report, so I would
so-
like to move the legislation.
Okay, so there is a motion for approval properly seconded. And now it's back to you to move your substitute, please, ma'am.
I would like to move my substitute.
Okay. Properly seconded. Members heard prior the report regarding the substitute bill. Is there any discussion on the proposed substitute? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of Ms. Porterfield's substitute, please say aye. Any voting no? Any abstaining? Okay, Ms. Porterfield, we're back to you for a motion on your bill as substituted.
Move for approval.
Okay, Ms. Porter, do I hear a second? Okay, properly moved, properly seconded. All in favor, please say aye. Any voting no? Any abstaining? Okay, you have adopted this resolution as substituted. Okay, moving ahead to our next, let's see, item 26, thank you, was pulled from consent by Mr. Coupin. This is agenda item 26, resolution 2024-257, sponsors Porterfield, Parker, Welsh, Allen, Cortez, Coupin, and Ewing. This is a resolution approving an application for the Transportation Planning Grant from the Tennessee Department of Transportation, aka TDOT, to the Metropolitan Government acting by and through the Nashville Department of Transportation and Multimodal Infrastructure, aka NDOT, to determine strategies to support improvements in traffic flow, safety, mobility, and overall efficiency of the transportation system. So Ms. Porterfield, it's to you for a motion on the bill to start, or reports? Right, okay. A little complicated because you're given the report and it's your bill. I gotcha. Okay, motion on your bill, please. Ms. Porterfield?
Move for approval.
Okay, properly seconded. Okay, now to you for your committee report from Budget and Finance, please, ma'am.
Budget and Finance approved this item, 15 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting.
Okay, and Chair Parker, on agenda item 26, your report, please, sir.
Transportation and Infrastructure recommended approval, 10 in favor, 0 against, and 0 not voting.
Okay, having heard the committee reports, properly moved and properly seconded, is there any discussion on this bill? Okay, oh, Mr. Coupin? There you are. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam President. And I'll be brief. I know we're trying to keep as much on consent as we appropriately can. Just wanted to make a brief comment about this. Very supportive of Vision Zero. Last meeting, one of my colleagues made some comments, which I've since spoken to him about, and he totally shared that he felt like he came off the wrong way. So this is not meant as a negative towards anybody else. But just wanted to make clear my commitment and this body's commitment to pedestrian safety and the importance of, lighting and infrastructure and ways to take care of our pedestrians. There were some comments that were made that were, I think, a little hurtful to some people and characterizations of people that were not appropriate or correct. So I didn't get an opportunity to clarify that last time. I wanted to clarify it this time, especially because the 7th Annual Pedestrian Memorial is this Saturday, the 24th, at Trinity Community Commons, and I'll be there in support as well. So just, again, wanted to clarify that and, stand and show my support for pedestrian safety. Thank you.
Okay, is anyone else seeking to be recognized for discussion on this resolution item? Okay, properly moved, properly seconded with all committee reports. All in favor, please say aye. Any voting no? Any abstaining? Okay, you have adopted this resolution. Okay, moving. Okay, so we are through all of our resolutions not on consent. And so now, in following the regular order of the agenda, we then move to bills on introduction and first reading. Okay. All items on first reading may be taken at one time. Do any items need to be pulled from first reading consideration? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion for approval of all items on the first reading? Moved, properly seconded. Okay, all in favor of the items on introduction and first reading? Please say aye. Okay, all bills on introduction and first reading have been approved. And now we move to bills on second reading that were not on consent. Okay, and first among those is Agenda Item 58, Ordinance BL 2024-179, sponsors Porterfield, Toombs, Benedict, Swara, Coupon, Gadd, Prep T, Ewing, and Welsh. This is an ordinance to amend Section 2.44.115 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws to require reporting related to use of force by the Metropolitan Nashville Police Department. To you, Ms. Porterfield, for a motion, please.
I would like to move for a 2-meeting deferral, and I would also like to ask for the committee reports, please.
Okay. Is there a second? Okay, so this is properly before us, and so now we will go to our committee reports. Ms. Evans, Chair of Public Health and Safety, you are recognized.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. We heard item BL 2024-179 and agreed 9 in favor, 0 against, with 0 not voting to move a 2-meeting deferral.
Okay, that's your only committee report, Ms. Porterfield, so it's back to you, ma'am.
Move for a 2-meeting deferral.
Okay, is there any discussion on the deferral? Any explanation of the deferral, or you just?
Sure, I would love to, Vice Mayor. So I know colleagues, we discussed this legislation previously and in committee today. MMPD did share that they had some concerns about the legislation, so they wanted some time for us to continue working on it. So we agreed to a 2-meeting deferral so that we can work on the language of the legislation, and then we will bring it back before the body.
Okay, you've heard the explanation of the 2-meeting deferral. It has been moved and properly seconded. All in favor of a 2-meeting deferral, please say aye. Aye. Any voting no? Any abstaining? Okay, this meeting is deferred 2 meetings. Okay.
I have a point of order, Vice Mayor.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I believe, Director Darby, if you could clarify, we normally ask for a committee report and then we move
Yes,
for
ma'am.
approval.
As long as there's a committee report given. As long as a committee report is given before a third reading, we're good.
Okay.
So, but yes, after we talked about it a second ago, the cadence feels off a little bit.
Yes,
so.
yeah, we will return to our usual cadence of asking the committee reports first and then requesting the motion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Porterfield, appreciate that. Okay. Alrighty, so next on our agenda of bills on second reading that are not on consent is Agenda Item 63, Ordinance BL 2024-192, sponsors Porterfield, Parker, and Ewing. An ordinance authorizing the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County, acting by and through the Metropolitan Department of Water and Sewerage Services, to enter into a license agreement with Cumberland River Compact for the installation and maintenance of the Bandalong Bandit Litter Trap, which I see is misspelled, and so I wonder if that's what this substitute is about. Litter trap in the North Fork Ewing Creek at 3426 Brick Church Pike. Okay, committee reports, please. Ms. Porterfield, you are recognized.
Committee reports, Budget and Finance voted 12 in favor, 0 against, and 0 not voting for both the legislation as well as the substitute.
As well as the substitute. Okay, great. Chair Parker, you are recognized, sir.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Transportation and Infrastructure considered the substitute We voted 10 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting on that. And once we took up the bill as substituted, we recommended in favor 11, 0 against, and 0 not voting.
Okay, with committee reports in, it's back to you, Ms. Porterfield, for a motion on your bill, please.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I would like to move the substitute.
Okay, does Ms. Porterfield need to move approval of the bill first and then move the substitute? Yes, and that's kind
My
of what got us,
apologies.
that's a little bit what got us out of cadence, Ms. Porterfield, but yes, you have to put the bill
So I would
properly
like
before
to-
us.
I would like to move the bill.
Okay. The bill has been moved and properly seconded. You all have heard the reports and the proposed substitute. Mr. Nash, are you seeking to speak? We don't have a substitute moved yet, so do you want to wait and speak on? Okay, yes, sir. Okay, so now the bill is properly before us. And now, Ms. Porterfield, if you would like to move your substitute.
I would like to move the substitute, Vice Mayor.
Okay. Would you like to provide a brief explanation for the substitute?
It is cleaning up, it's a housekeeping to clean up something that's misspelled, but Director Darby, could you also speak to it?
That is it. It's leader instead, it should be litter instead of leader, so it's just a little typo cleanup.
Litter has 2 T's. Okay. Alrighty, so the substitute has been moved and properly seconded. Mr. Nash, are you seeking to be recognized on the substitute, sir? Go ahead.
Yes, Madam Chairman. Was there any discussion at the committee meetings? I'm certainly for cleaning up all the litter, and apparently these things do a pretty good job of catching floating litter. But I know when we discussed something like this for Mill Creek, there was a discussion about during potential flooding, there would be
Mr. Nash,
some way to pull it out.
If we might, please, sir, if I
Yes.
may interject. Let's pass the substitute, and then we'll be speaking on the bill as substituted. So,
Okay.
okay,
Thank
right? So all in favor of the substitute, please. Please say aye. Any voting no? Any abstentions? Okay. Mr. Nash, it's back to you, sir, on the bill as substituted.
Yes, Madam, I was curious, the discussion around what happens when this creek is flooding, is that going to be an impediment, or do they kind of look at the weather report and pull it out just to keep it from flooding?
Is there anyone that is capable of speaking to what happens to the bandalong bandit litter trap in a creek when there is a flooding condition? Okay, it does not look like there is anybody here from the administration, Mr. Nash, to speak on that in particular, but we are registering that request with the administration. I see the water department here nodding. I'll go back to you, Mr. Nash. Okay. All right. Is anybody else seeking a question or discussion on this bill as substituted? Okay, seeing none, this substitute is properly moved and properly seconded. All in favor, please say aye. Any voting no or any abstaining? Okay, so you have adopted this on second reading. Okay, next we continue with second reading. Okay. There are no more items not on consent on second reading. So we have disposed of second reading, members. And we are now moving on to bills on third reading that are not on consent. Okay? Okay, so now we are on agenda item 82. Ordinance BL 2023-79, sponsors Benedict, Evans, Siegel, and Welsh. This is an ordinance amending section 17.12.040 of the Metropolitan Code zoning regulations regarding covered front porches within the required street setback. Ms. Benedict, it is to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'd like to move the bill, and then I have a substitute that I'll move after that.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, there's a motion for approval, and we are in our phase of discussion at which you, Ms. Benedict, can now move your substitute. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was clicking you on. I clicked you off. Go ahead.
Sure. So I'd like to move the substitute, please.
Okay. Do you want to provide a brief explanation for what that substitute does, please?
Absolutely. Yep. So this bill I'm going to explain the bill in order to explain the substitute because if that's okay.
Members, hey, if we can just keep it together for just a little bit longer. Thank you.
Thanks. So what this bill does is it allows a covered front. One of the most frequent requests that we get for the BZA is that a constituent wants to add a front porch onto their home. What this bill does, and it's been worked on through the planning department and the codes department, it allows you to a homeowner to build a front porch that's no longer than 6 feet, as long as that remains at least 10 feet off of the right-of-way. So what this amendment does is it says that that cannot be enclosed underneath it. The rest of the original bill says it can't be enclosed, period. But this also says it can't be enclosed underneath it. None of it can be habitable space. So that's what the substitute does. And with that, I renew my motion. Thank you.
Okay, I appreciate that. We also need to ask for a committee report, Ms. Benedict.
yeah.
As this is Title 17, we get our committee report on third reading. So Chair Gamble, regarding Ms. Benedict's legislation about front porches, do you have a committee report, please, ma'am?
Thank you. Planning and zoning recommended approval, 11 in favor, 0 against.
Okay, now with the committee report in and a proper motion to approve and an explanation of the substitute, let's see, we are then voting on the substitute. Yeah. All in favor of the substitute, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, was there any discussion on the substitute? Let me, nope. Okay, any voting no? Any abstaining? Okay, so now it is back to you, Ms. Benedict, for a motion on your bill as substituted, please, ma'am.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'd like to move my bill as substituted, please.
Okay, there is a motion to pass the bill on third reading as substituted, having heard the committee report previously. Is there any discussion on the bill as substituted? Okay, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any voting no? Any abstaining? Okay, you have passed that bill on third reading. Okay, the next bill that is not on consent is Agenda Item 83, Ordinance BL 2023-133, sponsor Harrell. An ordinance to amend Title 17 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws, the zoning ordinance of the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County by changing from CS and AR2A to SP zoning for the property located at 3332 Murfreesboro Pike, north of the intersection of Murfreesboro Pike and Mount View Road, 4.86 acres, and located within the Murfreesboro Pike Urban Design Overlay, all of which is described herein. Mr. Harrell, you are recognized for your committee reports, sir.
Committee reports, please.
Okay, let's see. We need then a committee report from you, Chair Gamble, on BL 2023-133, please, ma'am.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Planning and zoning recommended approval as amended, 11 in favor, 0 against.
Okay. Okay, so that report shows support for both the amendment and the bill as amended. So it is back to you, Mr. Harrell, for a motion, please, sir, on the primary bill to start. Oh, I apologize, sir. Go ahead. Ms. Evans and Mr. Parker. Shh, please. Okay. Thank you. Mr.
Madam Vice
Harrell.
Mayor, I move for approval for the bill.
Okay, so there's a motion for approval, properly seconded, okay? And so now, Mr. Harrell, it is back to you then, please, sir, to move your amendment.
I move the amendment as approved.
Okay, do you want to provide a brief, it's properly moved and seconded, would you like to provide a brief explanation of your amendment?
Absolutely. So with the SP, we added a few regulations as far as what the community wanted to see, what they did not want. So some things were carved out based off of community engagement.
Okay, you've heard Mr. Harrell's explanation of his amendment and the committee report. It's properly moved and seconded for the amendment. Is there any further discussion on this amendment? Seeing none? Okay. All in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Any voting no? Any abstaining? Okay, so now we're back to you, Mr. Harrell, on your bill as amended, sir, for a motion.
I motion to move the bill as amended.
Okay, do I hear a second? Okay, Mr. Harrell has moved his amended bill, properly seconded. Is there any discussion on the bill as amended? Okay, I see somebody bopping around in the back, but they have not pressed their button. And so seeing no discussion, all in favor of BL 2023-133 as amended, please say aye. Any voting no? Any abstaining? Okay, you have adopted your bill as substituted and amended on third reading. I think Ms. Stiles is super excited about a Wawa, maybe? I think that's maybe what's going on here. I'm not sure. Okay. All right. Is that it? 103. Okay, the next item, not on consent, but on third reading, is agenda item 103, ordinance BL 2024-171, sponsors Toombs, Gamble, and Parker. This is an ordinance authorizing the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County to accept new public water and sanitary sewer mains, fire hydrant assemblies, sanitary sewer manholes, and easements for 3 properties located at 2115 and 2151 West Summit Avenue, also known as Summit View. It's to you, Ms. Toombs, and I'm not sure, doesn't look like you have any committee reports, so it's to you for a motion, please, ma'am.
Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. I move for a 1-meeting deferral.
Okay. There's a motion for a 1-meeting deferral. It is properly seconded. Is there any discussion on the deferral? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of a 1-meeting deferral, please say aye. Okay, any voting no or abstaining? Okay, this is deferred 1 meeting. So that will be, Ms. Toombs, to the meeting of March 7th. Okay, and to that end, colleagues, I will remind you all that our next meeting will be on Thursday, March the 7th, due to the primary election on Tuesday, March 5th. With that reminder, and pardon? And then also, Ms. Darby asked me to please remind you that our committees will travel with that. So committees will not be on Monday. They will travel and be on March 6th. And the meeting on the 7th. Ms. Allen, are you seeking to be recognized?
Yes, on that topic. And will deadlines likewise shift or not? Deadlines do not shift. Good to know.
Okay. Our legislative deadlines do not shift. You
Even
all
for
can
amendments?
see your legislative deadlines on your legislative Outlook calendar if you opt into that. With that, I will take a motion to adjourn. Okay. We are adjourned. Well done.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.